These rats are rambunctious here at West 96th Street and Broadway.
Everybody's talking about it.
A swarm is how Linda Colarusso and her neighbors describe it.
Come down. No, I'm not coming down. You got mice running around here. You talk about me come down.
Forget the cute cartoon mouse. Forget the pizza-carrying meme. New York doesn't have a rat problem. It has a systems problem. And it just so happens to have fur, teeth, and a hairless tail. For decades, New York City has poured billions into sanitation, infrastructure, housing, and rat mitigation. Estimates tied to rodent damage prevention, healthcare exposure, and lost productivity push the economic impact towards, get this, $19 billion over time. $19 freaking billion. And yet if you walk through parts of Brooklyn, the Bronx, or even Manhattan after dark, you'll just see them as bold as ever. Darting from trash bags, slipping into subway grates, owning the sidewalks like they pay rent. They don't, but they might as well. My name is Curtis, and I'm going to say something that a lot of city officials won't say. New York isn't losing the war on rats because rats are like unbeatable. No, it's losing because the city refuses to admit what the real enemy is. And no, it's not the rodents. The enemy is policy inertia, bureaucratic theater, and a civic culture that tolerates visible decay as long as it's politically inconvenient to confront it. You can hire a rat czar. You can redesign trash cans. You can run awareness campaigns. But if the underlying incentives and behaviors don't change, you're just rearranging cheese on a sinking ship. Let's start with the obvious here. The brown rat isn't new to New York. It arrived in the 18th century and has thrived ever since. It thrives because New York feeds it. Not intentionally, of course, but the city's density, aging infrastructure, and long-standing practice of piling garbage bags directly on sidewalks create a 5-star buffet. If you were a rat with basic survival instincts, would you leave? New York produces more than 14 million tons of waste annually when you factor in residential and commercial trash. For years, much of that sat curbside in plastic bags. That means easy access. That means predictable feeding times. That means reproduction cycles that stay uninterrupted. A single female rat can have up to 6 litters a year. Multiply that by an estimated population that ranges from hundreds of thousands to potentially millions, and you have exponential growth. Here's the part that no one likes to talk about. Rats are a symptom of urban management failure. When trash collection schedules are inconsistent, when building owners neglect basements and alleyways, when construction sites leave open access points, you're not fighting rats, you're subsidizing them. The city has tried poison. It's tried bait boxes. It's tried public education campaigns telling residents to secure trash. It even appointed a director of rodent mitigation, informally dubbed the Rat Czar. That position grabbed headlines. It sounded decisive. It felt like action. But symbolism is not strategy, my friends. Poison has diminishing returns. Rats develop bait shyness. They adapt, they learn. You kill one generation and the next fills the ecological gap. Worse, poisons can harm other wildlife and pets. They don't fix why the rats are here in the first doggone place. And here's the controversial take. New York doesn't have a rat intelligence problem either. It has a human discipline problem. See, cities like Tokyo have dense populations too. They produce waste too. Yet you don't see the same level of rodent visibility. Why? Because trash is handled differently. Waste is sorted, bagged, timed, and often placed in containers rather than loose on sidewalks overnight. Cultural expectations about cleanliness are stricter. Enforcement is tighter. New York's model has long relied on residents and businesses doing the right thing without consistent accountability. That works in theory, but it falls in practice. Now let's talk money. The $19 billion figure isn't just a neat line item on a city budget. No, it is an accumulation. Rodent-related property damage, health impacts, inspections, extermination contracts, sanitation overhauls, and indirect economic drag. Rats chew electrical wiring. They contaminate food storage. They undermine foundations with burrowing. They carry pathogens like leptospirosis and salmonella. When infestations spike, restaurant ratings drop. Tourism perception shifts. Real estate values can suffer. That is not cosmetic, that is economic warfare. And yet, the city's response often focuses on optics. Press conferences about new trash bins, pilot programs in select neighborhoods, social media campaigns about keeping sidewalks clean. Let me be blunt here. If your trash is still sitting in plastic bags on the curb at 8 p.m., you have not solved the root issue. New York has recently begun rolling out containerized trash systems in certain districts. That is progress, but progress is slow, fragmented, and unevenly enforced. In a city of over 8 million people, partial compliance equals systemic failure. There's also the infrastructure problem, right? Aging sewer systems provide nesting grounds. Subway tunnels offer warmth year-round. Construction booms create constant ground disturbance. Prime real estate for burrowing. When a new luxury development goes up, rats don't disappear, they just migrate, often into nearby residential blocks. And here's where politics enter, right? Aggressive enforcement against negligent landlords and businesses risks backlash. Strict sanitation fines can be framed as anti-small business. Mandating costly infrastructure upgrades in older buildings trigger budget fights. So the path of least resistance becomes incrementalism. Rats thrive on incrementalism, right? You can't politely ask an ecological opportunist to respect city guidelines. Let me zoom out for a second. I am currently living in Southeast Asia, and yes, there are rats here in Vietnam. Tropical cities, open markets, street food culture. Like, you expect chaos. And in some places you will get it. But what I've noticed is this. Visibility and normalization matters. In neighborhoods where food waste is highly managed and daily cleaning is relentless, rats are far less brazen. They still exist, but they're just more cautious. Where standards slip, they surge. It's not geography, it's governance and culture. Back to New York. There's a psychological component here. Over time, residents get desensitized. A rat darts across the subway platform and people barely flinch. Social media turns this into a joke. Late night comedians use it as a punchline. When infestation becomes like meme material, urgency dissolves. That is dangerous. Because public health isn't a meme. Rats aren't just gross. They are vectors. They transmit disease directly and indirectly through fleas and contaminated surfaces. In dense housing environments, that risk compounds. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Inequality plays a role. Wealthier neighborhoods often mobilize faster. They hire private exterminators. They will pressure local officials. Low-income areas may deal with chronic infestations longer. That's not just a sanitation issue, it's an equity issue. So what would winning actually look like? First, universal containerization of trash. No more loose bags, period. If that requires investment in standardized bins and revised pickup logistics, so be it. The upfront cost is dwarfed by the long-term economic drain of ongoing infestation. Second, synchronized enforcement. Fines for non-compliance should not be symbolic. They should be consistent. Building owners who repeatedly fail to secure waste or seal entry points should face escalating penalties. That is not anti-business, it's pro-civilization. Third, infrastructure modernization. Sewer repairs, sealed construction perimeters, mandatory rat-proofing in building codes. Yes, it is expensive. But again, $19 billion says the status quo isn't cheap either. Fourth, data transparency. The city tracks rat complaints. Publish them in real time. Make neighborhoods accountable. Let residents see trends. Public dashboards create pressure. And here's the part where I'll lose some people. Cultural expectations must shift. Urban life doesn't have to mean tolerating visible vermin. Other global cities prove that. Density is not destiny. Some critics will argue that rats are inevitable in any major city. They'll say eradication is unrealistic. And they're right. Total eradication probably is. But reduction to a non-visible controlled baseline, that's achievable. I mean, folks, I'm from Dallas, Texas. That's where I was, born and raised. And man, I barely saw rats growing up. Even to the point when I left Dallas to move to Atlanta before coming, here to Asia, I barely ever saw rats. I mean, Dallas is a very clean city. So, New York can figure this out. The problem is that New York keeps fighting a tactical war instead of addressing the strategic battlefield. Poisoning nests without changing food supply is like mopping the floor while the faucet is still running. There's also a bureaucratic fragmentation problem. Multiple agencies share responsibility. Sanitation, health, housing parts. When accountability is diffused, momentum stalls. A single rat czar can coordinate messaging, but without authority to override departmental inertia, the role risks becoming symbolic. And you don't want symbolism here. Now let's talk about construction, because this is a deeper issue. New York builds constantly. Every excavation disrupts existing rat colonies. When nests are disturbed, rats scatter into adjacent blocks. Unless pre-construction mitigation is mandatory and enforced, development can unintentionally seed new infestations. Then there's nightlife and food density. Thousands of restaurants, sidewalk dining sheds, outdoor trash. Again, this isn't about blaming small businesses. It's about systemic design. If you expand outdoor dining, but you don't simultaneously upgrade waste containment standards, you've increased rodent carrying capacity. Rats are not evil masterminds. They're just opportunists. They follow calories. And calories are abundant in a city that never sleeps. There's also the subway myth. Yeah, rats are visible on tracks, but much of the breeding happens closer to human waste streams, basements, alleyways, and garbage storage rooms. When property management cuts corners, rodents capitalize. So why hasn't the city solved this already? Because politically, rats are a medium priority crisis. They're not as urgent as crime spikes or housing shortages. They don't dominate election cycles. They just simmer. And here's the thing. Visible disorder erodes civic confidence. It signals neglect. And once residents internalize that neglect is normal, standards slip everywhere. Urban resilience isn't just about climate adaptation or economic growth. It's about baseline order, clean streets, secure infrastructure, and predictable systems. The $19 billion mistake isn't just about money spent. It's about money spent without structural reform. It's about treating symptoms loudly while quietly preserving the conditions that caused them. New York is one of the most resource-rich cities in the world. It has world-class universities, massive tax revenue, and some of the most talented urban planners on the planet. The idea that it can't significantly reduce its rat population isn't convincing. It's just complacent. Winning doesn't require theatrics. Winning requires discipline, mandatory containerization, strict uniform enforcement, infrastructure upgrades, construction oversight, transparent data, cultural reset. And yeah, that means short-term inconvenience. It does mean new rules. It means spending money now to stop bleeding money later. If that sounds harsh, good. Urban governance shouldn't be sentimental. It should be effective. Because here's the alternative. Normalization. Generations growing up thinking it's just part of the city life. Like seeing rodents scurry past your feet. Tourists filming them for TikTok. Businesses factoring infestation into operating costs as a line item. That is not inevitability. That is resignation. When I walk through certain parts of Southeast Asia, I'm reminded that density and vibrancy doesn't have to equal disorder. You can have chaos and control at the same time if the systems are tight. New York has the brains, it has the money. What it lacks is sustained political will. And that's why it's losing. Not because rats are unbeatable, not because port cities are doomed, but because half measures, PR campaigns, and fragmented accountability don't defeat biological opportunists. They empower them. So next time you see headlines about new rat initiatives, ask a simple question. Does this reduce food access? Does this reduce shelter access? Does this enforce compliance universally? If the answer is no, it's just theater. And if you're wondering why I'm so blunt about this, it's because urban decline doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It creeps, it normalizes, and it becomes background noise. Rats are background noise in New York right now, but they don't have to be. I'm Curtis, and look, I don't think the richest city in America should accept vermin as a cultural mascot. The $19 billion mistake isn't that New York tried to fight rats, it's that it tried to fight them halfway. And halfway doesn't win wars. See you next time.